On this episode of Newsflash, his brother called the cops because he was suffering a psychotic break. He ended up dead. Also, witnesses in Kenosha detail the night Kyle Rittenhouse opened fire. And finally, what is Andrew Sullivan up to now? It ain't nothing good. Guys, trust me on this. It's not good. We are pleased to welcome you back to another episode of Newsflash here. We have a lot of stuff going on for you today. So this is just a lot of good stuff. But we start off tonight with just an absolutely horrific story. So this isn't in the appeal here. His brother called for help after he was acting strangely. Police knelt on him until he was brain dead. Body camera video shows that Daniel Prude was complying with police when they knelt on his back and pushed his face into the ground for so long he stopped breathing. Very similar to the George Floyd situation, except for this point, this guy was suffering a psychotic break here by all accounts. And yeah, it is nothing but just probably one of the more egregious situations. I'd say put it right up there as egregious with George Floyd. Like, I don't see how this is not a massive story. Probably more egregious than what happened with Jacob Blake. Like, this is just some awful stuff that this guy ended up dead. So Joe Prude, that's the brother, he called the police for help. His brother was acting strangely and had suddenly bolted out the back door. But when Rochester police found him, Daniel Prude, this is the guy who was killed, soon after, naked and walking in the street, they handcuffed him, mocked him, and put a mesh bag over his head, knelt on his back, and pushed his face into the ground until he stopped breathing. Police records and body camera video shared with the appeal show. Prude, who is black, was unarmed. Clearly, I mean, the guy was naked. It's not like they could, conservatives would be like, oh, he had something in his pocket. Like, no, he didn't. He was naked. This was a lynching, Joe Prude told the appeal. That was a cold-blooded murder. My brother was a loving individual. He was a likable guy and a damn good brother. He made people laugh. He brought joy to people. He didn't deserve what happened to him. A week after the March incident that left him brain dead, Daniel Prude was pronounced dead. A lawyer representing his family said, months later, Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin would kneel on George Floyd's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, sparking nationwide protests over racism and police violence. The video of Prude's death was obtained by the local racial justice group called Free the People Rock. It was first made public Wednesday. It eerily echoes Floyd's death. The officers are ignoring Prude's cries for help and continuing to kneel on him as he appears to stop breathing. Local advocates are asking to know what the police called a quote-unquote mental hygiene arrest turned deadly. And something about that phrase. Can we just talk about how insane, absolutely insane that phrase is for a second? Like, mental hygiene arrest. Like, that's what it's come to now. Sending the police in for, and this is a big part of what people mean when they say kind of like defund the police, cut the police budget, stuff like that. Like, the police should not be coming for this instance. If someone's having a psychotic break, you send probably the ambulance, right? Like, that is just to me, it's an inherently logical move. Like, that is what you would do humanely in the situation. If someone's suffering, like, because a psychotic break is not a crime. It's not a crime to suffer something like, to do anything like that. And I think if you go crazy and what you do is out of your control, then, I mean, I don't know what to say, but thankfully he didn't do anything bad here. He literally was just completely, I mean, by all intents and purposes, compliant with police officers. So the video of Prude's death was obtained by Free the People Rock and shared with the appeal here. Stanley Martin, who's an organizer there, says, quote, it's been really traumatic for the family to think that they called for help and this was the result, which is, I think, another great point. They called for help. They said, and again, if this is what you can do, why would people call the police? What is the point of people calling the police if this is what they're going to get? When you talk about the systematic mistrust that people have of the police, this is what they think will happen when they do. Like, when people call the police, this is what they think is going to happen if they're hesitant. Like, this is the worst case scenario. A guy who's a close family member of the guy calling the police gets killed when he called the police for help. Like, this is not protecting. This is not serving. And yeah, it's really just an absolute mess. And really just, I mean, really just as, I think, egregious as George Floyd or any of the other tragic incidents that have happened. And I mean, of course, I'm in no rush to kind of compare them and weigh them against each other. But I mean, I don't see, like, I don't get how this is not like a bigger story. Maybe, like, I'm going to say this and it's going to take off in the next couple of days, but like and right now, of course, the latest news is 7 people have been, and of course, seven officers have been suspended. That is the latest coming in today. So of course, the mayor and state senator, senior state officials were faced a lot of questions. So when he tried to rise, officers forced Prude face down on the pavement, one of them pushing his head to the pavement. As again, New York Times reporting here, video footage shows. Prude was held down for 2 minutes. He had to be resuscitated, and he died a week later in the hospital. He did not die on the scene. He was brain dead, but died a week later in the hospital. His death did not receive widespread attention until Wednesday when the family released raw police videos of the encounter, which they obtained through an open records request. The scene is a black man handcuffed and sitting in the street wearing nothing but a white hood. Seemed a shocking combination of physical helplessness and racist imagery from another era. Like, this is really just something that, like, we were not supposed, like, it's amazing. I think it's going to be amazing for a lot of people that stuff like this goes on in America. But of course, for some people, it's very common in their life. Rochester is a city of 200,000 in western New York and became the latest city to be roiled by the death of a black person in police custody, with protesters, of course, taking the streets Wednesday and Thursday. Absolutely an outrageous situation by any count. It'll be interesting to see what happens, and hopefully there is some sort of punishment here with these officers, I think, going to jail, because this is just, I mean, if you look at this video, I mean, I don't know how you're going to look at it any differently, because it's just an absolutely repulsive showing here. The disciplinary action against the 7 officers was the first response to Prude's death. There was a news conference on Thursday. Mayor Lovely Warren apologized to Prude's family, saying that Prude had been failed by our police department, our mental health care system, and our society, and he was failed by me. Warren did not offer details about why the investigations in the March 23rd encounter had taken so long, and suggested she had been misled by the police chief, LaRon D. Singletary. Experiencing and ultimately dying from drug overdose in police custody, as I was told by the chief, is entirely different than what I ultimately witnessed on the video. So, of course, this is what they always do. It was drugs. This is what they try and do. So the medical examiner, as we go back to the appeal here, the medical examiner determined in Prude's death was a homicide caused by complications from asphyxia in the setting of physical restraint. So a report from the Monroe County Medical Examiner shows a medical examiner's report attributes those complications to excited delirium, a controversial diagnosis often cited by law enforcement that isn't recognized by major medical professional organizations due to acute pretty much PCP intoxication. So this is, again, the whole thing what they like to do. And again, this is the thing. It's so, when you hear a big police officer in uniform step up behind the microphone and say, this guy was on PCP, like, it's very, very tempting to want to listen to him and be like, oh yeah, well, this guy was clearly on PCP here. No, like, cops lie. We have to keep reminding ourselves of that. They lie all the time, especially about these things. The mayor's coming out there said that she was misled. I mean, are we really acting logically if we take any of these people seriously on their word here? Like, I don't think they've earned that right yet. I really do not think they have earned that right yet. There's a pretty good chance this was just a psychotic break and there was no PCP in the equation at all. And really, if this body cam footage wouldn't have to come out, think about it. That's what they would have had to deal with. This is what the family would have dealt with. They're being told by the police department, sorry, there was nothing we can do. He was on PCP, and with that explanation, that's what you're going to have to take. And now your brother, your son, your friend, your cousin is dead, and he's never going to come back. So think about that. At a press conference held Wednesday morning, Free the People Rock and Daniel Prude's family demanded the officers responsible for Prude's death be fired. I think that is a perfectly reasonable thing to say. Later in the day, Rochester Police Chief Ron Singletary told reporters that the officers involved had not been suspended. We don't have a problem holding anyone accountable, but the investigation has to take its course. So, again, why this has been going on, 6 months now? This is a 6-month investigation. Okay. Okay. Well, okay, buddy. Okay, Laurent. So, it's unbelievable. But the New York State Attorney General Office is investigating Prude's death according to executive order from Andrew Cuomo and will decide whether or not to prosecute the officers involved. So on March 22nd, Prude got on an Amtrak train from Chicago to Rochester to visit his brother. He was behaving unusually when he arrived, and he had threatened to harm himself, Joe Prude told the Appeal, so he was contacted the police and has had his brother taken to the hospital. But he was released within hours, Prude said. Later in the early morning hours of March 23rd, Prude asked his brother for a cigarette and suddenly ran out the back door. So Prude called the police again. Joe Prude called the police again. An officer arrived, and Joe Prude told him his brother was only a danger to himself and told the police not to kill his brother, which is really kind of an incredible thing to say to a police officer. Hey, my brother's on the phone with psychotic break. A police officer should clearly not be coming. This is a guy suffering a mental health emergency. He's probably not going to be roughed up by the one guy flailing his arms around is not going to kill any EMTs, let alone kill any armed police officers. But body camera footage from the responding officer shared with the Appeal shows the police found Prude around 3 a.m. walking naked and bleeding down Jefferson Street. Keep in mind, in the middle of snow is falling on the ground at this point. Rochester police officer Mark Vaughn pulls out his taser and tells Prude to get on the ground and put his hands behind his back, which is, again, their first instinct with these for some reason. It's no clear threat, no crime committed, no accusation committed, no accusation of any wrongdoing done here. What's the first response? Get on the ground, hands behind your back. We're taking it. Like, why? Why? Why are the police coming for an instance like this? It makes no sense. So Prude complies and is handcuffed in the car without incident. After touching Prude, Vaughn returns to his squad car and uses hand sanitizer on his gloved hands, saying, quote, "That was easy and fast," Vaughn says as he walks over back to Prude. So I apologize. Prude is immediately complies. He's handcuffed easily. Gets right on the ground. He returns to his squad car, puts on hand sanitizer. He says that was easy and fast. He walks back to Prude. At least 5 Rochester police officers stand over Prude, who's lying on his stomach on the cold, wet ground, and you can hear them, by the way, all in the meantime, the video, like, back up, please, back up. So Prude appears to spit several times on the ground, but not at the officers. When the officers, Jesus Christ. One of the officers asks if anyone has a spit sock, and then Vaughn asks Prude, "Sir," and kind of what is, if you see the video, is clearly meant to be a sarcastic tone. You can judge for yourself by the video what he's trying to accomplish when he says this. But he goes, "Sir, you got AIDS, do you? Don't you? You don't got AIDS, do you?" Vaughn asks Prude, who is again clearly not okay, writhing on the ground and repeating himself. Another officer again asks for a spit sock, and Prude is handcuffed on the ground, and all of the officers are standing a few feet away from him. Vaughn pulls one out of his pocket and puts it over Prude's head. He complied with all their demands, and they treated him like a piece of garbage with not even one basic speck of humanity. Elliot Dolby Shields, an attorney representing the Prude family. No, hey, are you all right? Hey, can we get you a blanket? It's freezing out, and he's naked. They don't offer him anything, which is really just insane to me. When Vaughn covers Prude's face with a spit sock, Prude's demeanor changes, though he continues to ramble. His voice begins to quiver and sounds like he's on the verge of tears. He repeatedly asks officers to take the mask off his face and tells officers to give him their mace. handcuffs and guns. So again, this guy's not really talking sense here, needs to be taken away. After about